Man, this is Deion Dawkins, man, and you're listening to The Scoop on owlscoop.com. You already know.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to The Scoop, owlscoop.com's podcast, Season 8, Episode 4. I'm John DiCarlo, the editor of the site, joined again by everybody's favorite owlscoop.com reporter, Javon Edmonds.
Am I really everybody's favorite? Because I'm
Yes, you
going
are.
to take that and run with it.
You should. You should. Kyle's not here to defend himself. Caden's not here to defend himself. Sam is pretty much fully ensconced with his work at the Inquirer now. He's going to be covering the Penn State beat, and we know that he gets reminded every 2 days or so that when he starts sending out Penn State updates, he gets threats of, "Oh, I'm not going to follow you anymore." But Sam's still going to hop on the pod with us every once in a while, and Caden will as well. Kyle's going to get back into the mix, hopefully in a couple of weeks. But regardless, Javon Edmonds is everybody's favorite owlscoop.com reporter. The title is yours until somebody else comes and takes it, as far as I see it. Agree or disagree?
I agree. If the editor said it, I can't disagree.
We got a lot to go over today. I mean, more so, we'll have more of a detailed preview and breakdown of next week's season opener at Duke. Javon and I will be there on the road, taking a road trip down to Wallace Wade Stadium, beautiful Durham, North Carolina. We'll get more into Duke next week. We do have some updates for you today. We decided to record a day later in the week because Stan Drayton and a few players spoke earlier today. We're recording this on Thursday, and they spoke over at Everett Golson Hall. So talked to Stan Drayton. He had some updates about the roster. We talked to Isaac Moore, talked to Jalen McMurray, and talked to Jordan McGee as well. And we'll have some audio for you. Before we get into that, famous number 4s, Javon, what do you have?
All right. So you left a few off the list, so I had to add some on. Two bad boy Pistons, Joe Dumars and Adrian Dantley. If you want to consider Dantley a part of the bad boy era. The gunslinger, Brett Favre, of course.
Yeah.
Chris Webber. I got a throwback for the people around here. Dolph Shays, technically a Sixer. Bobby Orr and Mel Ott.
Yeah. Lou Gehrig. I mean, those are just a couple I put up. If you want to go deep dive, very good Temple football player, Alex Joseph. But yeah, ton of number 4s. I'm sure we'll be criticized.
A washed Charles Barkley in Houston.
Yeah. War number 4 there. Just dropped the 3 off of his 34. So
Russell Westbrook in the Olympics.
Yeah. If we forget a few, let us know. It means that you're listening, and we appreciate that. So let's get to the big news of the day, and not surprising news, is that Stan Drayton named D'Wan Mathis as the starting quarterback for the season opener. We kind of thought that he might say that on Monday. Media availability was initially set for tomorrow. So we talked to Stan this past Monday, was the first of his weekly Monday press conferences for the season. So I asked him about starters, and he said that he would announce more starters next week. So he said that Quincy Patterson would be the backup. We've got some audio here of him talking about the whole quarterback room. Also thought it was noteworthy, Javon, that he said that they're going to travel all 4 quarterbacks, which I think is interesting, kind of cool. And, I think we're not surprised by the D'Wan Mathis news, right? That Quincy's the backup, Mariano Valente's in the mix, and he wants to travel EJ Warner, true freshman there. Again, surprised or not surprised by this?
I guess I'm not surprised. I didn't think they'd travel EJ, but why not? I think
more
EJ...
so just the D'Wan news.
Oh, the D'Wan news? No, not really. I figured he'd go with the incumbent guy. And he saw some talent in him. Drayton has some Power 5 experience, so does Mathis. Patterson, a little bit of Virginia Tech experience. At North Dakota State, 7-0 as a runner. Passing, you wanted to see that improve. I think he was barely over 50% with his completion percentage. So, D'Wan, 7 games last year, about 1,223 passing yards, 6 touchdowns, 59% completion. So there's potential there. He's got faith in Langsdorff. Drayton does. So not really too surprised. I would be surprised if EJ Warner doesn't get a red shirt this year, though.
Yeah, and again, that's a decision that they can make at any point. Yeah, this wasn't too surprising. I thought he was going to name him again this past Monday. But here's some audio of Stan Drayton talking about the whole quarterback room. He talks mostly about, or in part, talks about D'Wan just being consistent, and he gives you a sense of what else is going on in the quarterback room as well.
We're going to travel all four of those guys. We're going to travel four, and we feel as though that all four are in the process of preparing really well. I will go ahead and uncover this. I mean, D'Wan will be our starter, backed up by Quincy. And, we do feel that Mariano and EJ have made unbelievable strides along the way. So that's one position where, two of those guys have been battle tested. They've been in it before, so we don't expect a whole lot of flinch from those two guys. And Mariano's a very mature quarterback who's been in the program for a long time, and he knows the offense inside and out. I mean, we don't skip a beat from a football IQ standpoint at all. Mariano has to go in the game, and EJ obviously being a true freshman, there are some things that you need to learn. He's not battle tested yet, but he's stacked some really good practices along the way. So we'll travel four. We'll go with D'Wan, but again, as a culture, if you're labeled a starter, it's your job to keep that status. Every day we're going to go out and we're going to compete, and you can keep it one day, you can lose it one day, and we don't want to necessarily rattle their cages, but we want to make sure that we're still sharpening each other's tools, that we continue to get better along the way. So,
what did he show you? What did D'Wan show you just to kind of lock down the starting spot, at least for the season?
He's been very consistent. He's been consistent. He's grown up a lot. He's putting in the proper amount of work that he used to put in. He's leading the charge. He's making adjustments on the run. He's making sure guys are getting lined up in the proper place. I mean, he's showing that he has a well-rounded understanding of what we're trying to do on offense. He's managed situations really well, and he's throwing the ball really well, and he's a threat with his feet. He's proven that over time in a consistent manner to where we're ready to let him take the bull by the horns.
So Stan was also asked if he could play two quarterbacks. He said maybe, not trying to give up the whole playbook there. I would think that, and again, we'll get into the running backs in a little bit, that if things are stalling out in the running game, that could be where they have a package for Quincy Patterson. And I talked to Stan in a follow-up question. I don't think it was in that clip that we just played. He talked about Quincy, and I asked him about his arm. A lot of people know him as a runner. He said he does have a very live arm. We got to get him back into rhythm. He's a product of three very different styles of coaching. So, but yeah, not too surprising there. But I wouldn't be totally shocked if you see a package or two for him in the opener. We'll see. Drayton also talked about having an offensive coordinator in Danny Langsdorf that has coached three styles of football at Nebraska, Colorado, and his time with the Giants as their quarterbacks coach in 2014. He also, when I asked him about the specialists, he said that Ahmad Anderson will start off as the team's punt returner again. Not a huge surprise there. As far as kick returners, he said that Malik Cooper's in the mix, Jalen McMurray will be in the mix, and he mentioned Jakari Norwood. He called Jakari a very hard runner.
So again, Jakari shook up the running back room in a good way, too.
Yeah, he seems very, very high on Jakari Norwood. So, again, more sort of like unsolicited praise there. He also said Jose Barbone will get work as a punt returner. Isaac Moore also spoke today. It was very entertaining. Can't remember the last time we talked to him. Again, players didn't talk in the spring. That was Stan's decision. He talked about, when the team got there, when he got there in 2018, there was a solid backbone of toughness. I think he really opened up a lot today. And then he said little by little things chipped away. He praised Ed Foley, and he said the way he talked, the way he demanded things from players kind of contributed to that. And he talked about Ed Foley. And again, nobody asked him about Ed. He just brought up Ed unsolicited. He brought up Kenny Yeboah unsolicited. So I think it was his way of saying that, yes, the whole vibe of toughness and some pride around the program definitely deteriorated over the last 3 years. He did not use the word deteriorate. I'm using that word for him, but he did talk
He
about
said
that.
they chipped away little by little.
Yeah, chipped away. So I guess that would be the definition of deteriorating, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much the Urban Dictionary definition.
Yeah. So, and he talked about with Foley, said the people like Ed and people like Kenny Yeboah made things so hard that the game was easy. And he said when he left, it was a big impact. I felt personally, especially on special teams. So now that we're getting back to Temple tough and what Temple football really means, it feels great. So
yeah, he said he wished he was born a few years later because he's that excited about the future of the program. So when you got somebody like that who's been around for 3 different coaching regimes, saying he's that excited about the future, there's something for fans to be optimistic about.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a guy too that just like Adam Klein, those guys were around. They were the bookend tackles who got some starting, snaps as true freshmen, and were there when Chris Wiesenham was there. Weeze left for 3 years, went to Georgia Tech with Jeff Collins, and he had some high praise for Chris Wiesenham today. So there's a guy that's come a long way. Again, Isaac's got to go out and prove it at left tackle. I think he's had some great moments at Temple. He's had some very inconsistent moments at Temple. I don't think I'm breaking any news here, but if you see Isaac Moore take a step forward and Adam Klein take a step forward with those guys, especially too being single-digit guys and leading the way, I think that shows you that the line really is benefiting from the return of Chris Wiesenham. I asked to try to get Wisdom Parshi today, didn't get him. I think ideally he starts at center and Adam Klein stays at right tackle. We'll see. I was hoping to talk to Wiz today. Maybe we can get him next week. Again, we mentioned Jalen McMurray spoke. Again, if you follow the program, you know that he got a single digit last week. Big deal for him because he only played in 4 games last year as a true freshman. He was great too. Great to talk to him. He credited his father for his work ethic. He said his father started him on 5 a.m. workouts when he was in 5th grade.
Yeah, that explains why he's a normal be in the facility at 5:30 guy. You kind of don't break that habit when you start that early. I know me personally, me and my dad probably would have gotten into a scuffle.
I was going to ask you if your dad had you doing 5 a.m. workouts when you were in 5th grade.
Yeah, no. My dad wouldn't wake up at 5 a.m. for anything. So no, yeah. Shout out to Mr. McMurray for that though. Got his son to be essentially a team captain as a redshirt freshman at Temple. So that's when they say active fathers in their athletes' lives, I guess that's a prime example of it.
Absolutely. A 5th grade John DiCarlo was just worried about missing the bus to Euclid Hills Elementary School. Could have walked to the school anyway, but
actually, you know what? I'll say this: a 5th grade me was doing 8 or 9 o'clock workouts on the black tops outside with my mom.
There you go. That's something. That's impressive.
We went one day. It was either a day after it rained or a day it rained, but like it wasn't raining anymore. And there was a mud puddle like on the baseline that I slipped and fell into. I don't know what drill I was doing. We didn't go back to that court again. And then we went during the afternoon one weekend. No, it was a weekday after school. And I think I hated my mom for like a week because she had me run so many suicides just for shuffling my feet. Like if I hear your feet scraping on the ground, you're running. And
did she play basketball?
Yeah, she played in middle and high school before she got pregnant with my older brother. So yeah, she had me running those suicides nice and early. And every coach I played for afterwards loved to make me run. So
very impressive.
Yeah.
Very impressive. Shout out to Javon's mom. That's impressive stuff. So in addition to talking to Jalen McMurray, again, we got more before I get to another point from Stan Drayton here. Jalen also talked about tipped his cap to Keyshawn Paul and Cameron Ruiz, who again we should know numbers 0, 1, 2 is given decline, right? So 0, 1, what numbers are still out there? 0, 1, and 4? I
think it's 4 that's available. So there's 4 numbers still available.
Yeah, and so Stan said, that process isn't quite done yet. So, the guys I'm talking about here, and we don't have any solid information on this. Like, a couple of people have asked us, "Wow, it's interesting that Jalen McMurray got a single digit and Keyshawn Paul didn't, or Cameron Ruiz didn't." He talked about them today. Jalen McMurray did, and talking about how the quarterback room was kind of like a safe spot for him to open up and become a leader, which I thought was was pretty cool, and a tip of the cap to them. Stan, also, we'll close things out here before we go over to the mailbag. Stan talked about some other position battles. Sam Cohn did ask him about some other ones that he thought were kind of tightening up. He mentioned the safeties, he mentioned the running backs, mentioned the wide receivers, mentioned the defensive ends. He unsolicited praised Trey Thomas, the outside linebacker, rush end, who's coming in as a transfer, spent last season at Independence Community College. And we'll play this audio for you here. This is the full clip of him talking about those position battles and talking a little bit about the running back room as well.
Dan, obviously the quarterback is a noteworthy starter today. I'm curious where else you feel like you have the strongest positional battles, maybe across the board.
The safety position. There's going to be, you got some older guys that have played here, and you got some younger guys that we have brought in that have really created some great competition in that position. The defensive end position with the addition of Trey Thomas, and you got Lato that's growing up every single day, and so those two are in a constant battle. And those are two real football players there that go after it every single day. The receiver position, you bring in some new talent, and the sense of urgency, enhances. The running back room, Jakari came in, and rattled that room in a positive way, and everybody stepped their level of play up, and that's what it is, right? That's why, you'll never hear me come in here and say that's the starter and actually write it in concrete, because we get better the more we can sharpen each other's tools on a daily basis. But these guys have benefited from it. I think they're buying into it. An immature team will struggle with that. They will struggle with that. But this team is showing maturity in the sense of that they understand it and they embrace it, and they love the competition. They love the competitive atmosphere.
All right. So again, we'll have a lot more on Duke next week. They talked a little bit. They're already preparing for Duke, and again, we've talked about this before. It'll be an interesting season opener for both teams. Mike Elko coming in from Texas A&M. He was a very good defensive coordinator there. Stan Drayton coming in from Texas. So two new head coaches, talked about, having to look at film from different assistants and stuff like that. And looking at, Kevin Johns is coming over from Memphis. He's going to be the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach at Duke. So, when these teams prepare for each other, it's going to be a mix of, I think Stan talked about today, like we have to try to anticipate what their strengths are going to be. And a lot of it's going to come down to us with in-game adjustments, trying to take our best stab at that and then adjusting in game.
Yeah, I think one thing for the Duke game that's going to be helpful as the season goes on, because I don't think Memphis replaced Johns with anybody from the outside. I think it may be somebody from his staff last year as the offense coordinator this year. I'll double check. But if that's the case, Temple could finally beat Memphis in back-to-back seasons, because neither school has ever beaten each other in back-to-back seasons. So if you see Kevin Johns' offense in week one, when you see it again before the bye week, I want to say, then you've kind of got a leg up, and you might be able to become the first team in that series to win back-to-back games.
Tim Cramsey is their offensive coordinator now. So at Memphis, that is. So,
yeah.
So again, we'll have a more detailed Duke preview next week as things ramp up heading into the game. We've got some good mailbag questions that we want to get to close the rest of the pod out here. It'll take a while to get through these, but we're so happy to get these mailbag questions from you, our subscribers and our listeners. We very much appreciate it.
Cramsey's from Allentown.
What's that?
Cramsey is from Allentown.
Oh, he is.
And he was the offensive coordinator at Marshall last year. So it won't be the same offense, probably. So I'll take that whole statement back.
Javon Edmonds holding himself accountable. I love it. Yeah. Love it. Rockland Al brings us our first mailbag question. Question there is, what is the biggest reason for optimism going into the season on offense and on defense? What do you think?
For optimistic purposes, I think just you got to be excited about the offensive line with Weeze coming back, number one. I think defensively, the fact that an inside linebacker and an edge rusher got single digits those are two what we call premium positions in football now. So with those being single-digit guys, the front seven has some sort of stability, I guess you'd say. Like, that's something to be excited about. Of course, the corners are pretty much locked down. So I think those are the two position groups to be the most excited about. The edge rushers, well, not the edge rushers. Having McGee and Varner as single digits, and then on the O-line with Weeds returning and Klein and Moore still there, and Corsi and all those guys. I think that's the most optimistic parts of the team.
I think for me, that off the top of my head, the biggest reason for optimism going into the season is the coaching. And again, Danny Langsdorff and DJ Elliott have to go out and produce as coaches, but I just think that the level of coaching that these guys receive on both sides of the ball is going to be better. The programs that they've been at, I think the defense is going to have more personality with the simulated pressures. Not that DJ Elliott's the only guy in America that does that, but they've talked about, I think Antoine Smith talked about the fact that the front three or the front four, based on how multiple they're going to be, isn't going to have to account for all of the pressure. And if a guy like a Trey Thomas starts to develop this year, I just think the level of coaching is going to be better. And it's always fun to see what happens with a coaching switch and a coaching change, which guys get better, which guys respond to different coaching. That's my biggest reason for optimism. Again, you mentioned some of the key position battles, which are good to keep an eye on. Next mailbag question comes from TUAL08 is the screen name. Based on what you've seen from practice, will fans be surprised with the level of play this year? What do you think, Javon?
I think they'll be, I don't know if content's the word. I think they'll be pleased by the level of play this year. I don't think you're going to see any quit in the team, and they're going to try to play hard. They're probably going to be more of a fundamental football team than they were last year. I know you hated, well, I won't say hated, you weren't the biggest fan of how sloppy special teams were.
I don't think anybody was.
And
all you had to do was open your eyes on that.
Yeah, and personally, watching them get ran over as much as they did last season on the defensive end, I just thought that front seven, and I can't blame the players for it at all. My problem was with Jeff Knowles and his scheme to stop the run last season. I was not happy with whatsoever. So I don't think we'll see anything that alarming this season. I think that
fans could be pleasantly surprised with the level of play this year. And again, we've said this a million times. This is a rebuilding program. If they end up winning 4 games or winning 5 games, I think it's a matter of how they win. How they win, how they lose. Are you seeing progress? Are you seeing signs of progress with different players, different schemes, that type of thing? Again, I think it comes back to the level of coaching that they receive. But sure, I think that fans could be pleasantly surprised with the level of play this year. Again, I think it's a big deal if they go down to Duke and win. And again, Duke could be a 2-10 program this year, and Mike Elko could look at his 2-10 record and say, hey, I'm seeing signs of progress there. Similar to like Matt Rule going down and a little bit into his tenure, going down and beating Vanderbilt, beating an SEC team. You're not beating Florida, but you're going on the road and getting a win, just like if they were to go down to Duke and get an ACC win. So I think the fans could be pleasantly surprised with the level of play this year. Next question comes from the screen name MooseJake08. Do you think that the Owls will be a good tackling team? It's a good question. Again, I know we say this every week, but just to remind people, we do not see the entirety of practice, not by a long shot. We see
the stretches and the warm-ups.
Yeah, exactly. And then you'd have to come back for media availability. I think the easy answer here, the predictable answer, not that people want this, is I think a lot of teams in America are somewhat sloppy tackling teams within the first couple of weeks if they're not tackling to the ground or hitting in camp. So I think that's in college and the NFL. I think that's maybe the sloppiest portion of the game that you tend to see in the first couple of weeks. But, hey, again, if you see good tackling, if you see good fundamental tackling from the veterans and some of the younger players, then again, tip your hat to the coaches, right? And say, hey, there must have been doing something right there. Do you think they'll be a good tackling team out of the gate, or do you think they'll be a little rusty?
It'll be rusty. I think by about a third or fourth game of the season, they'll be good to go. I just don't think this staff is one that's going to be happy with sloppy tackling. Like, I think all the fundamentals are going to be locked up. It's the extracurricular stuff that you have to keep an eye out for. But this is not one staff that'll keep guys on the field for playing fundamentally sloppy football.
Yeah, I think you make a great point there when you talk about the extracurricular stuff. And that talks about, again, we'll have to see how disciplined this team is when it comes to, are they hitting guys out of bounds, whether that's intentional or not? Are they a penalized team? Again, we'll just have to see how that goes. All that fun stuff to look at in the opener. You could be a good tackling team, but if you're not doing it at the right time and you extend the drive and it's like 3rd and 8 and you hit a quarterback on 3rd and 6 and he's 2 yards short and you extend the drive with a late hit, obviously not a good thing. That stuff can be rusty in the first couple of weeks, but we'll see how it goes. Next question here from Matt Deebs is the screen name. Seems like strength and conditioning was a weakness the past few years. Any idea how the new staff has done in that regard? Again, I don't think that, and again, the Iverson Clement thing aside, with all due respect to the previous staff, I just wasn't hearing great things about how players felt about the strength staff. I think that's part of the equation, that part of what went into the equation of them not producing on the field. So far, the reviews on Chris Fenelon and his staff have been pretty good. Adam Klein's talked about them. I even if you look at Adam Klein, he's always been a bigger guy as an offensive lineman. Played at Episcopal Academy as a local kid, but he even looks a little bit bigger and stronger. Fenelon was an assistant on the Ohio State staff dating back to 2019. The general vibe seems to be that they're working with a much better strength staff. Again, all these guys are, 0-0 heading into the season. Everything is mostly positive, and we'll see how things go when, or if Temple is 2-4, 2-5, and 2-6, and then do people feel as positive? Are they rebuilding, or is this inexcusable? And we'll see how fans feel after that. But I would generally say the vibes have been pretty positive on Chris and his staff, right?
Yeah. Like you said, Adam Klein's been giving them some praise. We haven't heard anything bad. I know Drayton was a fan of his work in the spring. So until we hear anything bad, we'll just keep assuming that he's doing pretty good.
Second to last mailbag question to close us out here. The screen name is B Devon4. Looks like the Owls officially named D'Wan Mathis as the starting QB against Duke. What are your expectations from Mathis this season? What does he need to do to reach his very visible at times potential? What do you think?
It's mechanics. Last season, I talked about his shoulders and his legs. His shoulders and legs were never square. Had a problem with following through on his throw. And I think he had a tendency to start running a little too early. Didn't go through his reads quick enough. So he's got to sharpen up mentally. And he's got to just stay more fundamentally sound in the pocket and not be so eager to take off running. I think that's just it's just little things for D'Wan Mathis. He's physically gifted. He's got arm talent. It's just about touch. I know we had this drill back when I was playing basketball, and I'm pretty sure, and our high school quarterback had this drill too. Just take a tennis ball home with you, and just when you're laying in your bed or just not doing anything, just keep flicking your wrist and throwing the ball up against the wall, and it should be coming right back to you. Works on your touch tremendously. It just small things like that.
The Javon Edmonds coaching clinic coming to you live on the Scoop.
I could start one,
Value added part of the podcast. I love it. But no, I mean, you nailed it. I think there is a lot of potential there. I think for his sake, it would be a hell of a story if he turns things around. And I'm not talking about, I don't think they need him. Again, I think we're all pretty realistic about what's going to happen in the first season. I think even Stan Drayton, he might have said on Monday, are we expecting to get the entire culture rebuilt in 1 year? No. Are we going to get everything done the first year? No. But, if he's, I'm not expecting him to pass for 4,500 yards, 35 touchdowns and 5 picks. Or, if he does, then Temple's got a shot to go to a bowl game and maybe compete for a conference championship. But I mean, you said it. I think a lot of the talent is there. I think the arm talent is there. And then there were times where he would nail a deep ball, and then there were times where he would really underthrow a deep ball or sail a pass, and you just say, okay. I mean, consistency is an issue. Stan Drayton said today he's been a lot more consistent. That's in preseason camp. Obviously, if he looks more consistent, again, I think obviously wins and losses are important. I get that. Anybody could tell you that. You don't have to come to this podcast for that. But I think it's really going to be a lot of how they win, how they lose. If D'Wan Mathis is doing the things you said, Javon, if his footwork's better, if he's squaring up his shoulders better, and then Quincy Patterson, who, again, Stan said has a pretty live arm, but it does sound when Stan talked about him, just to go off, direction here for a second, he said he's a product of 3 different coaching styles. I don't get the sense that Quincy is like neck and neck with D'Wan. I think it seems fairly clear that D'Wan's the starter. Now, if he falters, I think they go to Quincy, and he's got a strong arm. But I do think if they can mix in some packages where Quincy can get in there for a series or mid-series and mix things up, then you've got something to work with there. But yeah,
I think considering Patterson has had some success at a very high level of football, and Mathis, you missed 5 games with injury last season. Let's be a little precautious with you. They get into games where like they've got a blowout situation. Like, I got one for you right here. Lafayette and UMass. Quincy Patterson should be playing the second half of those games. They should not need D'Wan Mathis out there for the second half.
Ideally, yes. I think maybe more realistically, he plays the fourth quarter, especially
the fourth quarter at the very least the fourth quarter.
Yeah, we'll see. Stranger things have happened. Another statement / question here from B74. It seems like the vibes from this team are entirely different in a positive way under Coach Drayton. Is that noticeable in person during the snippets of practice you're allowed to attend? Yes. Not only that, just being in the building. I think I think Sam mentioned this several weeks ago or a couple of months ago on the podcast. I mean, again, I think they had nowhere to go but up. But I think that the guys generally seem happier in the building. I think that the vibe in the building is much better. Again, that's easy when there's a coaching change. I remember.
And no games have been played yet.
Exactly. No games have been played. So, again, in Rod Carey's first season, they go 8-4 in the regular season, finish 8-5. Again, lost to a very good North Carolina team, but they got their butts handed to them. But in that first year, generally speaking, a lot of what you heard from guys like, Chappelle Russell, Amir Tyler, Sean Bradley, and 2 of those 3 guys in the NFL right now saying, generally speaking, hey, he's pushing all the right buttons. He's letting seniors lead. He's not fixing anything that's not broken. And that's why I think, not that I thought Rod Carey was destined to be Matt Rule or a guy that was going to have the team 12-0 and playing in a New Year's Six bowl game 2 years later, but that's why the drop-off was so staggering. Yes, COVID affected everybody, but they really dropped off. I don't see that type of trajectory. Understand Drayton. I do think, as we've said before, I think he's a better CEO type of coach. I think he's done a much better job of wrapping his arms around the program. I think his assistants have done a better job of that. So I do think the vibes are a lot better. I think that they seem to just get it more. Again, now getting it more might, again, amount to 4 wins, but I keep saying this, it's how they win and how they lose. So yes, it is noticeable in person. I think that the spirit and the energy is better. It was terrible last year. It just never turned around after that Memphis win. So yes, I think it's much better. Again, let's talk about that in a few weeks. I would be shocked even if they go 4-8 this year or 5-7, I would be surprised if you start hearing leaks or you hear like, well, man, this staff has no idea what they're doing. The vibe around the program isn't good. Yes, you always have a couple of dissenters, and it's usually from players who aren't playing or parents of players who aren't playing. That's a tale as old as time. But I do think it's been noticeably different from what we've seen around the building. And in the final mailbag question to close out the podcast this week, this comes from the screen name Jeff MD49. What areas have the what areas have the special teams improved? I'm not getting positive vibes about the offensive line. Any info?
Again, we don't see practices.
Yeah.
We got no live action to give you anything off of except the spring game. And the spring game didn't do special teams, did they?
Oh God.
Actually, they
can't
tried
remember.
out punters, but they didn't do returns, I don't think.
Yeah, they didn't do returns. A couple times during the spring game, I was running around trying to get to some former players.
That too.
No, I mean, let's start with the second question first. I'm not getting positive vibes about the offensive line. I mean, we talked to Chris Wiesahan recently, and he said he has about 7 guys that he would consider to be above the line. Now, in a perfect world, he'd be saying, I have 10 guys that I feel really good about. I'm too deep. I'm comfortably too deep at every position. I don't know what Jeff MD is looking for here in terms of positive vibes. I don't know what you can reasonably expect. I think it's a positive that they seem as upbeat as they are about Isaac Moore and that he got a single digit, because Isaac has been up and down. Not surprised that Adam Klein has taken a step forward. I would agree that they're, when we talked to Weeze, whatever it was, 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, when I said, does Wisdom Force, you have that center job locked down? He said it's still fluid. Yes, as a fan and as a coach, you'd want to hear him saying, yeah, Wiz looks great. All the exchanges have been great. That was obviously an issue in the spring game. I don't know if that was a fluky thing. I don't know if that was the weather, but it was a thing. So, he has maybe 7 guys he feels good about. I don't know that it's this huge problem area where they're completely bereft of talent, but I do think, again, if you were to talk to Chris, he'd say, yeah, I mean, I want to have 10 or 12 guys that I feel really good about. He said Bryce Thoman is developing. I guess they feel like Jim Tuobadegu was coming around, a guy that the previous staff was high on, but they're a work in progress there, I would say. And what areas of the special teams improved? Yeah, again, as Javon said, we don't really know for sure. I mean, I think that, now Stan Drayton did say on Monday, I should say, they added Kyle, I think was the first to break this news, that Camden Price, former Miami place kicker, is now on Temple's roster. He's a grad transfer. Stan said, yes, he is going to challenge Rory Bell for the job. Now, Rory hit that 55-yarder at Cincinnati for the only points of the day. It kind of banged in, right? Like he kind of clanged it through, but still impressive nonetheless. But Rory Bell was 9 of 16 on field goal attempts last year. Not terrific. He did hit all 23 of his extra points, but yeah, Camden Price was brought in to compete for the job. So we'll see. And they're in a battle there. We don't get to see them kick after kick. We don't get to see much of special teams. Again, I think if you're looking for any improvement or potential improvement, again, these guys could be all talk, but I think they are very keenly aware that this program lost its way with special teams over the last 3 seasons. They weren't going after kicks. Sometimes there's only so much you can do in the kick game. If the team you're playing has a kicker that just consistently kicks it out of the end zone, or if you're just going for touchbacks there, but you want to see him go after kicks. You want to see him be more aggressive. Adam Shire and Stan Drayton have both said that they plan to be more aggressive. So we'll see. But again, we don't know until the pads come on. I would be surprised if they're not improved on special teams. If they don't, they're in deep trouble. But I'd be surprised if they're not a little bit more aggressive there. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that.
I'm with you on that. I think I've only got one nugget to add on to that, and it's got to do with the offensive line. You want something to be happy about or feel confident about. Feel glad that Weeze felt like he could afford to have Klein at right tackle and someone else at left tackle. The fact that he feels comfortable enough to put Klein somewhere other than left tackle, that's something to be happy about. Because that means
Absolutely.
Isaac Moore actually is doing better than we're probably giving him credit for in camp.
Absolutely. That'll do it for this week. Thank you for joining us for another episode of The Scoop. Again, we'll have more for you next week when we preview the season opener against the Duke Blue Devils. Thanks again to Javon Edmonds for joining me. Thank you to all of you once again for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.